Hello everyone. So welcome to this video. In this video we will be talking about the second part of your 13th lesson in grade 7 atmosphere. Now to start off with this lesson we are going to talk about air and its components. Before starting out with this lesson, I would like to recall a small thing that we discussed in our first video. So we talked about 5 layers of the atmosphere in the previous video. So if you did not watch that video, or if this is the first time you are visiting my channel and watching a video, I'd recommend you watch that video first, then start to watch this, because then you will have a clear understanding about the whole lesson in a proper flow. And you will be able to get the link to that video in the description below as well. And just to recall some things we learned in that, we have 5 layers which make up the whole atmosphere. So troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere and the exosphere are those 5 layers. When we are talking about these 5 layers, the lowest layer is the troposphere, and here we find 75% of the air in the atmosphere. So in the troposphere we get 75% of the total air we find in the whole atmosphere. So because of that, we are going to talk about the components of the troposphere when we are talking about air and its components. Now here in this table you can see the gases we can get in the troposphere and its volume as a percentage. So 78% of the troposphere is composed of nitrogen gas, 21% is composed of oxygen, and the remaining 1% of the troposphere is composed of gases like argon, carbon dioxide, water vapor and several other gases. Now according to this, when you look at these volumes as a ratio, you can see that nitrogen and oxygen are important main components of the troposphere, because even when you have a look at this pie chart, majority of it is nitrogen, next is oxygen, and a very little percentage of other gases. Now let us just talk more about each of these gases. Starting off, we'll talk about nitrogen, which is the most abundant gas in the air. And normally nitrogen under atmospheric conditions has a very low reactivity. We use nitrogen to fill vehicle tires and stuff, and also we use nitrogen as a good coolant, and especially liquid nitrogen is used as a good coolant. And as I had mentioned earlier, 78% of the volume of the troposphere is nitrogen gas. Oxygen we have 21%. All the rest just a minor 1%. And moving on to oxygen, we must understand that oxygen is the most important gas in air. Nitrogen is the most abundant, oxygen is the most important. Why do we say oxygen is so important? The main reason is because we need oxygen to breathe, because it is important for respiration of organisms. Besides that, we need oxygen to burn things. We need it as a support for combustion. And we also can separate oxygen from air. There are enough and more methods. Along with that, there are many uses of oxygen, especially to aid sick people, patients with respiratory difficulties. Over here you can see a picture. Even during the coronavirus, when the people have breathing difficulties, they provide oxygen through a machine like this, so that they will have pure oxygen intake into their lungs and be able to breathe more efficiently. So oxygen is also used for welding, cutting metal, using oxyacetylene flames. Besides that, astronauts and divers use oxygen tanks, which is rich in oxygen, when they go into places with low concentration of oxygen. So they can simply take this oxygen through their diving gears, or kits they dress when they go out to outer space, and have a supply of oxygen so that they can stay alive and function properly. Moving on, we have argon, which is the third most common atmospheric gas. Now argon is an inert gas. So inert means not reactive. It's a non-reactive or noble gas. Therefore, it does not have many chemical reactions with any other elements. Now, argon is normally used to fill filament bulbs. These filament bulbs you can normally see, they were very prominent back in the time. Now we have LEDs. Back in the time it was filament bulbs. Besides that, it's also used to produce electric lamps that emit an orange color glow. Over here also there is some orange color glow. So it was quite very much used to produce such lamps. Then the next one is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is very much essential for photosynthesis, which takes place in green plants. So what do you mean by photosynthesis? Photosynthesis in simple terms is plants absorb carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight and the pigment chlorophyll to produce oxygen, glucose, which is its food, and energy. So that is what you call photosynthesis. And also carbon dioxide is used when we extinguish fires. So when you see a fire extinguisher. Next up, it is also used to maintain the temperature on the earth. Now this point is very interesting and very important, which I will be explaining further on in the video. Besides that, we must also understand that the amount of carbon dioxide we exhale, we take in oxygen. And as you can see, the most abundant gas in the atmosphere is nitrogen. So we take in only 21%. We can take only a small amount of oxygen into our lungs. And this oxygen could have nitrogen in it, carbon dioxide in it, and so on. So we must understand, when we release it, we release carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide could have entered along with oxygen. Then we put out carbon dioxide, which was diffused from our lungs to the gas that was outside, and also the other carbon dioxide which came into the respiratory tract will also leave out while getting mixed with the carbon dioxide which was exchanged with the alveoli. So what we must understand here basically is that carbon dioxide composition is higher in exhaled gas than in inhaled gas. Here the carbon dioxide percentage when we inhale it is lower compared to the amount of carbon dioxide we release. That is it. Okay. Now, keeping this in mind, we are going to talk about the functions of the atmosphere. Taking each one into consideration, our first point under this main topic, which is very important, although it is a subtopic basically, is that the atmosphere provides oxygen needed for respiration of animals. So now this is an animal who is a cow basically. We all know this is an animal and it's a cow. So even though it's a cow, it can be a cow, a dog, a human. As long as it's an animal, we know animals breathe in oxygen. So why do they breathe in oxygen? So that they can function properly for their respiration inside the cells. They need this oxygen. Now we must understand that oxygen is very essential and it's present in the atmosphere. So the atmosphere provides this oxygen required for the survival. Therefore, that is one important function. Now, at the same time, this animal will release carbon dioxide. So these are the symbols for all of those gases, which are also called elements. So this carbon dioxide will be absorbed by the plant trees in order to take place photosynthesis. And then it will release oxygen, which will be taken in by the cow. And this is a certain cycle which you all will be studying in depth, especially when you all come to your ordinary level. Anyway, moving on, the next important thing is that plants get carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for photosynthesis. So I had explained earlier what is photosynthesis. So basically, again, let me rephrase it. Photosynthesis is the process through which oxygen and glucose, also energy, is produced by a green plant in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll once it absorbs carbon dioxide and water vapor. That is photosynthesis. So plants absorb this carbon dioxide, which is released when animals breathe out in order to carry out photosynthesis. So this is also another function of the atmosphere. As we had told 101 times, like lots of times basically earlier, nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere or in the troposphere basically. And we have it again, just to rephrase it, 78% of the volume of the troposphere is comprised of nitrogen gas. Now this nitrogen gases in the air will be fixed into these roots by a certain type of bacteria called nitrogen fixing bacteria. The best example for plants where you can find these bacteria are mimosa plants. There you get the roots, and in these roots you get the edges, which are the root nodules. Here there are those bacteria which simply takes this nitrogen and fixes it. Once the nitrogen is fixed, it will help the plant grow. So that is a very important function which a gas in the atmosphere plays for the maintenance of life. Next up, we are going to talk about the ozone layer. The ozone layer in the atmosphere protects the Earth from exposure to harmful UV rays from the sun. So we have the sun. The sun emits various types of ultraviolet rays. Now some of them are absorbed by the ozone layer, some of them are absorbed, some of them are reflected, and some of them simply enter the atmosphere on the Earth. Nevertheless, the ozone layer acts as a barrier. It protects us from harmful UV rays. So it basically acts as a shield. So that is a very important function of the atmosphere as well. Now, next up, we must understand that the atmosphere prevents the emission of heat of the earth to space, and it keeps our earth in a warmer condition. Now, this is called the greenhouse effect, and this is what I told I will be explaining in this video when we go further on. Now, here you will be able to get a clear understanding about what I meant at that moment. So as you can see over here, the sun will basically hit the earth. Some sunlight will hit the earth, and then it will start to reflect like this. We have various carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere. So these carbon dioxide and other gases will act as a barrier and trap this heat that comes with the light, causing the earth to warm up. So the more carbon dioxide, the more heat will be trapped. Therefore, global warming could happen. If we don't have an atmosphere, then the scenario is going to be different. No atmosphere means there is no gases like carbon dioxide or any other greenhouse gas which will help keep the planet warm. Then what's going to happen is, during the daytime it will be very hot, and during the nighttime it's gonna be very cold. The best example here is the moon. It has no atmosphere, therefore it's very hot during the day and very cold during the night. So this is a very important concept, the greenhouse effect. This is something we must remember even for a very long time, because this is very important for our life as well as for our future studies. Next up, we are talking about the hydraulic cycle. Now, another function of the atmosphere is that it is very essential for the maintenance of the hydrological cycle. So what is this hydraulic or hydrological cycle? Basically, it is the water cycle. Now, if you all do not know what is the water cycle, listen carefully, because now I am going to explain this to you all. Here you can see there are plants and various things. So plants and so on, they release water, H2O is the symbol for water, in gaseous form, that is water vapor. So that process where plants release water vapor is called transpiration. Now at the same time, the sun is going to heat up these water bodies like the oceans and lakes. Then you can see again H2O gas is going up. Some water vapor will start going up. This is called evaporation. When plants release water vapor, we call it transpiration. When water is turned into water vapor due to the sun's heat in water bodies, we call it evaporation. And then animals, if there was an animal here, it will be breathing, therefore there you will get also a respiration basically, and all these gases or water vapor will get collected into one point and will get condensed and form clouds. So when a lots of water vapor gets together and when the clouds are formed and when the clouds become heavy, those gaseous water will become water droplets and fall to the earth as rain. This rain is what we call precipitation. This process is called precipitation. And once that happens, it will flow into waterfalls, rivers, lakes, and then through ground flow it will go to oceans and several other things. So like such, transpiration occurs, evaporation occurs, then the water is condensed and it falls back, and this keeps on going like this. It keeps on flowing. So that's why we call it a cycle, and everything had to do with water. So it's the water cycle or the hydrologic cycle. Next up, another important function of the atmosphere is that it helps birds and animals like certain small insects and variety of birds to fly. The atmosphere provides a medium for these animals with that type of wings, streamlined body shape to soar through it and travel wherever they want to go. Next up, we must understand that the atmosphere, it helps for communication among people. So we have a layer called the ionosphere. So we didn't talk about this, but just remember there is a part called the ionosphere. And nowadays we communicate various things. We can communicate with various people through a certain type of waves called electromagnetic waves. So these waves are a bit complicated for y'all's grade, which don't worry, y'all will be learning in the higher grades. And if you want to know about waves, you can drop it in the comment section below requesting it, and I will make a video on it. So once these waves are there, they knock on the ionosphere and is reflected to another satellite or basically receiver. A transmitter will transmit a wave and a receiver will receive the wave, and then this is how communication takes place in the form of electromagnetic waves. Another important function of the atmosphere is that it protects the earth from meteors falling onto the earth and causing damages. Now the atmosphere, I told you, has a variety of gases. Now when this a meteor comes crashing to the earth, the meteor will start to collide with various gas particles in the atmosphere, and like this it will collide with the gases. So when it starts to collide, there will be friction. Due to friction, this huge rock or huge space rock, you could say, it simply gets heated and burned, and it starts to little by little shrink its size because particles will break out due to the friction, and like such the meteor will become smaller and smaller, and then the impact it will cause on the ground is going to be minimized. So the atmosphere protects the earth from meteors falling onto the earth. Those were some important functions of the atmosphere. Now we are going to another important subtopic, that is air pollution. First and foremost, we must ask ourselves, what is air pollution? In simple terms, when you add various substances to the atmosphere to change its composition and cause some harmful effects, it could be to the environment or to an organism, that is what we call air pollution. There are various things that cause air pollution. We can categorize them into two categories as gaseous pollutants and particulate pollutants. Gaseous pollutants are the pollutants that exist as gases: carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. Particulate pollutants are basically everything that is not gases, like carbon particles, lead particles. These are not gases but particles, pieces. cement, dust, insecticide droplets, unburnt fuel droplets, and asbestos particles. These are very harmful, and they will also play a major role to help with air pollution. So there are enough and more ways the air will get polluted. For an example, here when you take a look at this picture, you can see that these vehicles are burning or combusting fuels or fuels and releasing some toxic gases. So here, this is going to pollute the air. At the same time, factories, they also use these various fuels for their functions, and they will also produce some harmful toxic gases like this. Then you have thermal power stations. These things, when you keep on using them and exhausting them, they will also release some harmful gases. And then burning waste materials. When you burn various materials, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and various other chemicals will get released into the atmosphere. And when you burn them, carbon particles, lead particles, and so on will also get mixed with the atmospheric gas. And you have volcanic eruptions. Same thing happens here. You can see various particles and gases are released. Destroying forests. You chop the trees, you cut them down, you clear the forest, and then what do you do to get rid of these? You burn it up. So then what happens is you release some toxic chemicals. You release greenhouse gases, which is going to pollute the air and cause a major issue. Anyway, if you do such things, or if those things happen, we are going to have to face some severe consequences. There are severe or adverse effects of air pollution. The main thing, or one of the most prominent features, is we can see climatic changes on the earth. The best thing is increase in temperature. Because we burn various things, lots of burn various things release various greenhouse gases. The amount of heat trapped in the earth is high, and the ozone layer is also being destroyed due to it, and global warming increases, and there is a huge change in the climate. Next thing is, due to these various particles like lead particles, harmful gases, carbon particles, carbon monoxide, dioxide, and various gases like that, and other pollutants, you may get various respiratory disorders. And if there are certain oxides of nitrogen and sulfur which will help out, which will basically mix with clouds and make those clouds acidic and cause acid rains, which will simply destroy a large proportion of things, which is also very dangerous. And also we must understand that it will increase the temperature, as I had said earlier, and it's going to reduce the clarity and the transparency of air. Now, if you have a look here, this is what that means. These gases or these pollutants will create a smog, which is going to reduce the transparency of air. Now, these are few adverse effects. There are enough and more, but these are some few adverse effects that you all should remember. Now, if we want to prevent from these, what should we do? First and foremost, to minimize the poisonous gases emitted from vehicles, we can simply tune the vehicle engines. Now, you could sometimes ask your father to what does this mean. So they will be able to explain this to you in a much more live manner. If you have a vehicle, you could ask, okay, how does this work? Then you could ask him to show it a bit and see how this thing works. Next up, we can minimize the combustion of fossil fuels. So we basically burn lots of fossil fuels like diesel, petrol, and so on for various reasons. But if we can minimize it, we can prevent such harmful disasters and diseases and basically adverse effects. Another thing we can do is we can use eco-friendly energy sources. For an example, instead of using plastic bags, plastic boxes and bottles, you can use boxes or bags made out of paper, or boxes and bags made out of reed and stuff. There are enough and more ones like that. Also, there are these various factories releasing various chemicals and poisonous gases. If we can simply fix fumes, or we can release the fumes through a filter, there only the not so harmful gases are released to the atmosphere after filtering all the poisonous gases. This will also help minimize air pollution. Another thing we can do is recycle waste without burning it. We can reduce the usage of resources. We can recycle waste to use it as another material or as an energy source. We can reuse something to use something as a container, or we can keep on using it on and off for some purpose. So basically for that we can also follow the 3R concept: reduce, reuse and recycle. Then we must also protect forests. We could reforest also to prevent from causing such adverse effects. Another thing is we can use, instead of fossil fuels and stuff, we can use eco-friendly energy sources like the wind power or hydropower, biofuels and solar energy. Okay, so that is one thing. And there's a fun fact you all should remember. It's just something interesting. There are some countries where the air is so polluted they have artificial respiratory chambers. It's really an interesting thing. If you all have some time, do some research on it. It's really interesting. With that, we are coming to the latter part of our lesson. Now, to summarize everything from the first video up to this point, let us just read this out. The temperature and the pressure changes from the surface of the Earth to the upper atmosphere. Depending on these changes, the atmosphere is divided into 5 layers. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere are the 5 layers of the atmosphere. Atmospheres protects the Earth and the living beings on it from external dangers. Nitrogen, oxygen are the main components of the troposphere. The gases in the atmosphere help man to survive in many ways, and we discussed how. Air pollution is a problem that is affecting all of us. That also we had talked about. Now, to refresh our knowledge on what we learned in the first video and to test how much we have understood this lesson, let us do the exercise. So we are simply asked to put a tick if the statement is true, if the statement is false or incorrect. If it's basically a lie, put this symbol, a wrong. If it is true, correct, then you put this. If it is wrong or false, put this. So the first question here is, temperature decreases from bottom to top of the troposphere. Now in the first video, if you can remember, I had explained how to read a particular graph. This question is mainly asked from that graph. If you did exactly as I told, if you listen to how I had explained it, you will know that the answer for this is correct. So if you do not, just go through the video, check it and see is this correct or wrong, and leave a comment about your thoughts. Next up, the Earth is only planet with an atmosphere that can sustain life. No doubt that is true, because if there was another planet, we would have already have gone to those planets, so we would have heard about them at least. Only thing we know is that there was a time they did research thinking that Mars was somewhat suitable for life, because they found some sort of a bit of water, I think, something like that. Anyway, the third question here is, oxygen comprises the highest percentage in the atmosphere. No, that is false. Like I had said earlier, oxygen is the most important, but it's not the most abundant. Oxygen occupies only 21%. It is nitrogen that has the highest percentage and is most abundant, and is 78%. Next up, temperature increases from bottom to top of the stratosphere. So this is also something we had discussed in the previous video. Now I'm going to give you all a short time of about 5 to 10 seconds to think about this and carefully pick an answer, and I will tell it in a couple of seconds. Okay, so here it is true. If you take a look at the diagram, you will be able to see. The fifth one, climatic changes take place in the troposphere. Yes, true. In the previous video, I had explained it. So if you all are not sure, you all can simply go back to the video, just scroll through it and see, okay, did I mention it, in order to confirm it if you all are doubtful. Next up, stratosphere contains the most amount of ozone gases. Yes, the ozone layer itself is in the stratosphere, so true. Mesosphere has the lowest temperature. So true. That also I had mentioned in the previous video. Now with this, we have successfully completed the second part, and by completing the second part, we have completed the whole lesson, atmosphere. So if you all understood the lesson, got it to your heads, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you have not yet, like the video, and share it amongst your friends so that you can help them out during this time, and also improve your science knowledge and could have a much better understanding about the lesson. So if you all have any questions, comment down and I will answer them when I'm free. So until next time, bye.